So yes, what about the edible mushrooms?
Yes, probably my favorite of all is it's a lavender. You can't miss it because it's purple lavender. But in the British Isles, it's called the blue hat. And I always make a joke that the British are colorblind because it's not blue to me, it's lavender. It's really purple colored. And the Americans say, what did you call that? What did you say it was? And they say a blue hat. And the Americans say blue hat, blue hat, blue hat, blue hat. So in the United States, it's called the bluet, and they spell it B-L-E-W-I-T, which is a corruption of blue hat and stuff. But it grows on the lawns in big fairy rings and lines on the lawns all over campus here. It comes up. And that's one of my favorites. Another is chicken of the woods. People call it chicken of the woods or sulfur shelves because it's very orangish, like the color of sulfur. So, and this is a bracket fungus that grows on the sides of trees. And my friends, they chop it up into things, put it into their food, blend it in with that, and it's got a very nice texture. You know, it's very edible and a nice taste to it, like that. So we have, those are my two favorites. Yeah,
edible mushrooms.
Yeah, and you know, now the name comes back to me. Paul Stamets is the guru of mushrooms in the United States, and I went to Washington State to take Paul's mushroom growing class there, and of course he's done it for years. He knows all the mistakes and don't do this. You know, this is the way you do it, and he's knowledgeable about that. And when I had the big conference here on campus and wanted the people to join in, I called up Paul and said, Paul, would you come over and talk to our people? And I thought it was going to cost me a lot of money. And I said, how much do you charge to do it? And he said, you pay my hotel bill, I'll come. And like I said, there was standing room only for his talk. And then he did it a second night, and there was standing room only for that too. So
there is a lot of interest in the community.
Oh, very much in growing them. And I always recommend his books. He has books out step by step of all the different species that you can culture, you know. So you want to read that book, and it was picture by picture, shows you how to do everything there. And on the Big Island, we do have one big mushroom growing facility up the Hamakua coast at Lapahoihoi. Yeah, right now.
I believe there is a small one in Kona.
Yes, there's over there.
So they're growing quite well.
They do fine, but you know, it's like farming at the microbiological level. Right, you know, you can't get any contamination. You have to be very sterile with everything, and then then it goes well. And you know, you have to have the substrates shipped in. They use corn cobs, believe it or not, to grow them in, and they ship the corn cobs from Iowa, from my home state, all the way to Hawaii to grow the mushrooms on that, and sawdust. And
did Hamakua Mushroom consult you before they started?
Yeah, I talked to them. They borrowed. I remember the little what do you say? A little lighter they needed to do sterilization. They had a very meager beginning, but now they've done really well. Yeah.
So the other question is actually on the other side,
Okay.
like very scientific. So using molecular tools. Such as what is available to us, right? DNA sequencing and maybe barcoding, I don't know, environmental DNA. How does it change our understanding of Hawaiian fungi, like what we have in Hawaii? So did it change anything? Maybe it did not change. Did we learn anything new?
Not specifically, but the deal is now, in my age, you know, you describe new species or undescribed species by their morphology. What color are they? How big are they? And other aspects like that. Now, in order to publish any description, you have to have its DNA sequence in there to describe a new species. And in a lot of cases, it shows relationships between different mushrooms that you never thought about before. And when you see the DNA saying, hey, these are really alike, you go, oh yeah, they are. They really do look alike, and it makes sense to them. But, and, that now even undergraduates are learning to sequence and stuff. They learn these techniques, which you just have to learn now because that's the rage. But so far, not too many people have used it on Hawaiian fungi and stuff. Except, there are people in California and so on that are looking at a lot of the Hawaiian fungi and their DNA and so on. And the big thing now is to look in leaves. This is probably the only tree that I know of that doesn't have fungi inside of his leaves
because
it's plastic. But do you realize endophytes are fungi that live inside the leaves of plants? I can probably say it, every leaf on Earth, whether it's grass or a flowering plant or a pine tree, there are fungi that live inside the leaves, endophytes. And they rarely, sometimes they fruit out of the leaves, but rarely. They just sit in there. And then the questions are, what are they doing there? And why does the plant allow them to take some of their sugar? Obviously, they're taking some of the sugar that the plant produces. And what we know about these endophytes is that they produce very unusual organic chemicals. They produce them. So it's a bonus for the pharmacy people. They're looking at a lot of them, and they're unique organic compounds. And so they use them to test for anti-cancer, antibiotic properties, like that. And this is just a new field that's beginning. A lot of people think that the endophytes produce these chemicals to prevent herbivory, to prevent insects from eating on the leaves. But it's hard to show that. There might be a couple cases where that's been shown, but not many. So the thing then, you have the value of Hawaii. Hawaii, we have lots of endemic plants, and to look at this. So for example, what we had the students do is a very simple thing. They take leaves from, for example, we started with a kipuka. There's maybe 5 major species in there that we would look at. You select some random leaves off of each of those plants. You surface sterilize them with Clorox so that there's no fungi on the surfaces. Then you take a sterile paper punch and you punch out little discs, little circles there, and put them on nutrient agar. And I guarantee you that fungi will grow out of them, And when I was doing it just as an undergraduate project, we just described them by morphology. The mycelium that came out is red, or it's green, or it's yellow, or something. It's fuzzy, or something like that. But then, of course, you can do DNA on that too and describe that. So if we took an ohia tree at sea level, and we took a bunch of leaves, and then you calculate which fungus comes out of there. And there's one of this, and there's 50, so this is an endophyte that's important to this tree. Then you take the ohia tree up at alpine level, way at the top of the mountain, do the same thing with an ohia tree there, and you find out there's a totally different fungus that's an endophyte there. So there's just so many opportunities to see what's the importance of these endophytes to these plants. So if you transplant a tree, maybe you should transplant it to the same place where it came from. It won't grow well if you transplant it to a widely different place, because the endophytes are not right for that place.
That reminds me of the Human Microbiome Project, where they were looking for the microbiome in different people and different populations. They found the differences between different states, for example.
So there's just umpteen things you can do by looking at different species of plants. You could look at mosses, you could look at ferns, all different things to see what's going on as endophytes in these places.
And when they look at the endophytes, they looked at their genome, basically, right? So they look at the genetic differences between them.
Yep.
That's how they've been able to figure out what species are found.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
That's a whole new area.
That's a whole new area.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the question which I have here, so do you think Hawaiian fungi are vulnerable to invasive species or climate change? And I guess we have to talk about endemic species, right? So because I'm assuming that a lot of other species will be introduced, they will be not vulnerable.
Yeah. At this point, you know, the big danger that I worry about is the destruction of the native forest. You know, that takes care of it right there. You know, like the road, the road that goes over the saddle area takes out a lot of native forests. And now, because there's so many accidents there, people want to make a 4-lane thing, you know, so it takes even more of the forest. And some of those kipukas along the road there, they have endemic mushrooms in those areas. And so, you know, it becomes a highway after a while. So that, I think, is a threat on endemic fungi, yeah. Yeah. Other than that, I don't, you know, it takes a while for these things to happen, and right now it's a destruction of the rainforest, I think, that gets
rather
rid of.
than climate.
And climate change at this point.
So my other set of questions is related actually to the advice you could give to the students about like their future careers. What would you say to the students if they are interested in microbiology or mycology?
I would always say to the students, you know, to build up their resume as much as possible, even as young as they are, even in high school. It's too late, you know, in community college, but see if you can work with a professor or you know, a teacher or something like that on a project. That's what I did. You know, as soon as I got to undergraduate school, I was worked for a professor who had a project going, and you get some experience. Learn as many techniques as you can. Techniques makes you valuable to somebody else to hire you because you know how to do this. Like with the molecular studies these days, DNA sequencing and stuff. If you you can take courses, you know, at the university and how to do that and stuff. It makes you much more valuable. So work with the various professors and build up your resume. Because for the next level, then you'll be the one hired, you know, over another person. And don't be like me. Don't be afraid to ask people, you know. Don't be afraid to be turned down. I mean, somebody may say, well, I just don't have time, you know, or nothing like that. But don't be afraid to ask or be turned down. And somebody's going to say, yeah, I really was looking for a person like you or something. And, you know, work with these people, learn techniques, and build up your resume. That's what I would say.
That's a great advice.
Yeah.
So what do you think, how has fungal research changed since the beginning of your career? How is it different now compared to how it was back in the day?
Back in the day, I was, everything, you know, like I say, studying mushrooms and things like that was all morphology. What do they look like? You know, we didn't know about DNA techniques. Now it's just you have to have that. It's all molecular and that type of thing, and that's a big transition from when I was just getting started.
Do they study any biochemistry or physiology or cell biology?
Oh yes, yeah. I was a cell biologist, and you know, when I started out, because they had a new electron microscope here at the university, we would preserve tissue, cut it with diamond knives into thin sections, and then look inside of the cells and describe what was going on there. Now the techniques have changed in that they preserve the tissue in different ways. They freeze it with liquid freon and like that. And I did a lot of freeze fracturing and freeze etching where we actually look at frozen surfaces of cells and things like that. And so yeah, that changes, but I don't think it's not as much dramatic as going from morphological descriptions to molecular descriptions now. Yeah, that's a revolution.
This is the future. Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question. What excites you most about studying fungi in Hawaii?
Well, it's always a discovery of something new. It's getting out into the woods. That's what I like to do. Get out in the forest, make new discoveries like that. Yeah, and then once in a while, things work out scientifically. Like I was studying slime molds. We were trying to understand what the wall structure of these spores were, and I put one. We thought it had 3 different layers or 3 different composition, and so I used this enzyme and this enzyme and this enzyme. Nothing happened. Then I switched them around, and the last time they all germinated just like crazy. And you go, that's really scientific discovery. There's nothing more exciting than to make a hypothesis and try it, and it really worked, and you get the results there. So science, that's the thing, is discovery, and anyway.
Being the first.
Yeah, being the first to do that, yeah.
Thank you. So what do you hope future scientists in Hawaii will focus on? So in microbiology or fungi?
Yeah. Well, I think it's wide open for people to study endophytes. That's the new area. There's just so many opportunities, so many projects you can do, and you could even do it with high school students. You don't need too sophisticated techniques. Just to take snippings of leaves and culture them out and things like that. So I think looking at endophytic fungi in different plants is the big rage. Another thing is, over at Manoa, there's mycologists there who study marine fungi, and so there are fungi that grow on coral reefs and so on, and coral reefs is always in the news. So that's another area, that it would be novel and new, is to see what's going on with fungi in marine ecosystems. Yeah, like that, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and so, the last question is kind of slightly whimsical.
Yeah.
Why should students care about fungi?
Well, my whole thesis is the world is going to end. It's going to come down between cockroaches and fungi. These are the 2 most indestructible things that there are.
So mold is going to grow after that.
I don't know who's going to eat whom.
Regardless.
No, but do you realize how important fungi are? Bacteria are very important, of course, but fungi too. There's much to be learned about them. And I should just say, there's a Mycological Society of America, which I'm a member of, and they give awards to undergraduate students, to community college students, to undergraduates, to go to their meetings, and you can just apply for them, and I'm sure, they would get them. So
everybody will be happy to see students from Hawaii.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can just learn what people are doing, there. Go to some of the talks and meet some of the professors there, which they would be happy to meet some undergraduates. And so just to know, and they have scholarship research awards too to give to undergraduate research, so they could look into that.
And maybe you just said there is so much interest in the edible mushrooms, right? And there is so much interest in cultivating
yes,
mushrooms.
absolutely.
So
and
that
using
seems like a very promising field.
Right, and using fungi for food, other than just eating the mushrooms, they're actually making it into different
for the fermentation process? You mean, or?
No, not so much as they grind them up and mix them with other components to make them edible or flavorful and stuff like that. I think there's a big future for that too. Yeah. And of course, a lot of our antibiotics come from fungi. So we have a pharmacy school right here on campus, and they're into discovery of new compounds, and fungi are your deal with new compounds, like especially the endophytes, you know. So
I wanted to say you
there's
just
just
mentioned,
endless projects you could have with, if people have a chemistry, you know, take organic chemistry or have that type of interest there, to look at these strange compounds that the fungi are making, and what are they for? What's their purpose? Yeah.
Thank you. I think this is all I have.
Okay. Thank you for the interview. Yeah. Okay.